You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
Hey folks, welcome to the Beans and Dice podcast. I'm Carlos.
I'm Rob.
And today's guest host, the man who runs his own board game channel about arguing about board games with enough hairspray to create his own hole in the ozone, our man, Mitchell Prudhomme. Mitchell, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast version of the show. You've been a guest and a guest host of the call-in version of the show. This is your first time doing the audio podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, apparently you guys let anybody on here, right? Just gotta
Apparently,
call in a couple times.
yeah. And Carlos has been a guest as well on your show, Board Game Battles. We got to mention that. Put a shout out for your YouTube channel there. Doing great work over there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yep, Board Games Battles can be found on YouTube. Mitchell, tell us a little bit about what you do on Board Games Battles.
Sure. So I don't know why you keep putting an S after board.
Board games, board games battles. Board games battles.
English is not my first language. Is that what you're going to say?
We add an S to everything.
There you go. So Board Game Battles, each week I have a different buddy come on the show, and we pick a genre of board games, and we debate about which champion is better. So, for example, Carlos was on a while back, and our genre was best Viking game. And I argued for Blood Rage. He argued for Champions of Midgard. And then we put it out into the internet, give the audience a week to comment, continue the discussion, and vote. And then the next week we come back and announce the winner. Usually it's me, especially if it's against Carlos, but who knows? We release on Tuesdays.
Yep, I enjoy watching the banter between you and your guest host. It's always piffy. It's always, I mean, like cutthroat. It cuts so deep when you guys go back and forth. I really recommend anybody who's watching this channel to give that channel subscribe and just help them out. I mean, it's good stuff coming out of there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it is very cutthroat because we're competitive. That's why we play board games. We like to run each other into the ground in the games and in discussions. So it's a lot of fun.
And the big part of being able to do that, being able to have those strong debates that you have, has to do with having a knowledge of different games and how they play and compare to each other. And in preparation for this show and our conversations on getting into our first segment, which is games we played.
I lost you, bud. Sorry.
Oh.
Uh-oh. There you are.
And we're back. We good?
Yeah.
All right. So, one of the big things about being able to do what you do, Mitchell, on your Board Game Battles with your debates is having all of that background knowledge of other games and how they compare to the games you're debating that day. In preparation for this show, talking with you about what you've played recently really stands out about how many games you're getting in on a regular basis. So it's really going to roll us right into our first segment where we start talking about games that we've played recently, and we're going to allow Mitchell, lead us off. Talk about that.
Bat lead off. There you go.
Yeah. Well, I do play a lot of board games, especially during the summer. I'm a teacher, and kind of that is ending. So I've been trying to get a lot in lately.
Gotta get them all in.
As much as possible. Almost every time we game, if I like to try to get in a new game that a buddy has brought. And this past week, one of them that I've heard a lot about, been wanting to try, we played, was Rajas of the Ganges. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much that I bought it probably before the game was even finished on Amazon. It's like $38 right now, which is really cheap for a game like this. It's back from 2017, so not a super new release. It's worker placement. There's some dice, so Rob, you might not like it, but there are also cubes.
Okay.
So it's bittersweet. I don't know which way you want to go with it.
Little take, little give, yeah.
Right. So it's set in India. You know, Ganges is a river, and you have lots and lots of different options. Most of your worker placement spots require you to expend a die. Some of them don't, but most of them do. And you have a lot of different options. So you can sail your boat down the Ganges based on your die. If it's at least a 1, at least a 2, or at least a 3, you can go X number of spaces. That's one of the only places where you can exceed a number based on a die roll. All the other places you have to have an exact number. So there's an action for a number 1, a number 2, so on and so forth on your dice. And then there's also a separate tile placement board called the province board that you can combine dice of like colors to buy different province tiles. So, you know, if it's worth 10, you can do a 6 and a 4 or a 5 and a 5, so on and so forth. And you lay these tiles down and you're kind of trying to create a road like you do in Carcassonne. And based on where your road connects on your board, you can get different benefits. And also there's two things that are on the tiles in addition to the roads. There are like resources that you're trading, and there's buildings, and they have different interactions with other worker placement actions. So you can trade in, for example, a 3 die and have each of your trading posts of the different resources on your province's mat. Up to 3 of them can cash out however much they're worth. The buildings, whenever you place them, you get a set number of points for how far you have that building's track advanced. So that's almost like a completely separate part of the board, but it's important because it gets you money. And the way that the game ends, it's not a certain victory point value. It's not a certain number of turns. You're trying to get fame and silver, and they both start at the bottom right corner of the game. Fame moves clockwise, silver moves counterclockwise. And whenever they intersect is whenever the game in is triggered. So it was a lot of fun, but at the same time, it is a dice rolling game. So there's some negatives to that. There are a lot of dice in this game. There are different colors of dice. And so in my opinion, the dice quality was not super high. We saw some cracks in them. And I don't know if they were super balanced. I got ones so dang often. It was so frustrating.
Dice hate me.
In fact, yeah, I was first player most of the game because with the action for a one die is take the first player token and get like I think 2 silver. And so they were joking about how I didn't want anybody else to go first. And I was like, guys, if I could do more, I could. Now there is a resource called Karma that you can use to flip dice to their other side, which is nice.
6.
So you go from a 1 to a 6.
Yeah.
But the most you can ever have is 3, and it's also a multiplier. So if I use up my Karma and I'm down to 0. But then let's say I move down on the river and it says for every karma you have, get this number of resources. Then I'm basically wasting that whole action. So I never wanted to have 0 karma. So it's not like anytime I wanted, I can go from a 1 to a 6. So there was weakness in that. I mean, anytime there's a dice rolling game, but I enjoyed it enough to buy it. And even though I came in last, again, there's not points. But I had the farthest distance or the farthest delta, I guess you could say, between silver and fame.
This is what I've wanted to play for a while, and I've heard it described quite a bit as a Euro game, but you seem to make me a little worried. If it sounds like there's a fair amount of luck in the game, and as I said, dice hate me, and that's not just my opinion. That's a fact.
Let's not go anecdotal. Let's ask some questions.
All right. Yeah.
Even with all the ones that you rolled, how do you feel you placed? How'd you end up?
I was last. I had the farthest
okay. Yeah, he was pretty clear about that.
Yeah.
I felt that coming through, but yeah. So yeah, it's. But again, I still want to play it. This is a game that's actually been on my want to play list for a couple of years now, and so I know it's a pretty looking game. The board, from what I remember, has the river down the middle of the board, and you can
It's really nice looking. Whenever you first look at it, even as a gamer, I don't want to use the word intimidated, but you look at it and it's like, okay, this looks like a lot to learn, but it's really not bad. They're in sections, and pretty much every action in each section works the same way. Another thing I like about it, like I said, those victory point tracks, they go in opposite directions. And the silver, there's twice as many, so each space is half as small. So until the end of the game, toward the end, you don't really know who's in the lead, because for a lot of the game, I was in the lead in fame, but my silver was last. And other people, their silver was far up and their fame was literally on 0. Yeah. So, I mean, you could sit there and do the math, but it's hard to pick out a clear winner until, they're about to round that final corner. So it's kind of, you don't feel like you're just sitting in last place. You never feel like you're really out of it until the very end. Then it became a problem. The last couple turns, whenever it was clear that they're about to intersect and my things are still this far apart, I'm like, what do I do? There wasn't much of a catch-up mechanic.
These 2 tracks, they need to intersect for the end game to trigger. Is that
right? It's just the scoring track around the outside of the board. They move in opposite directions, and when somebody gets the 2 of them to cross over, so you can go hard on fame, you can go hard on wealth, or you can kind of balance it and try to have them meet in the middle somewhere, but it doesn't end until that intersection happens.
Now, what about all the other players? If they haven't intersected, how does that impact their scoring?
There's no. I mean, what we did was we looked at the differences between fame and silver and subtracted. I'm not sure if there's an official thing in the rule book. I didn't read the rules. It was being taught to me.
Yeah.
And so as soon as that happens, you finish the round. So there's a first player marker. So I think the person that did it, if I remember correctly, was like the second to last one. And so one more person got a turn and it was done. And there was no catching up.
This is Rogers of the Ganges. I'm looking online at the pictures of it and the dice. So give me a detailed example of how the dice are used in a round. So the dice,
Sure.
for those who haven't seen it, if you think of like Sagrada, translucent, beautifully colored dice, which you said were kind of flawed though. But how do you use the dice in a turn?
So anytime you gain a die, you roll it and it stays on that number. There's like, the little Indian goddess that has like 10 hands like this, all these different ways. You have a little thing that holds your dice. You can have up to 10. And whatever you roll it on, it stays on that unless you do something that lets you re-roll or you use your karma to flip it. And 9 out of 10 of the spaces, you have to spend a die to go there. So, if I want to, like I said, get the first player marker.
When you say spaces, you're talking about spaces on the board. So not the placing tile where the dice are held, but the worker placement aspect.
Correct. Yeah, you're going to be playing that on the board itself. So if I want to go down the river 3 spaces, I need to spend a 3 or higher and go there. So it's not just having the die or going on the space. It's got to be both. There's an action that lets you, like I said, pick up province tiles and put them on your province. There's some that have you get more dice, for example. In that case, you don't have to spend a specific number die, but it has to be a certain color die. So you can be spending them for the color or the value, but generally the higher value rules are going to get you better results from your actions.
Okay, so and that's where that impacted your ability to play because you rolled like Robert does.
Yeah,
snake eyes
always.
Yeah,
and I see
it became kind of a joke at the table. Whenever I was rolling, they knew it was going to be ones.
And it looks like each person has a little player board that there's a tile laying aspect to it. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the provinces. So it's symmetric. Everybody
you mentioned
has the same
Carcassonne in this one, kind of a Carcassonne feel.
It felt a little Carcassonne-y, not in the castles or the monasteries, but in the road. So it's different from Carcassonne. It's okay if you have a dead end. You might just kind of screw yourself up. But you're trying to, make connections to those bonuses on the edge of the board. Maybe it's silver or whatever.
Gotcha.
And also you're trying to get different types of building on the board. So you get immediate victory points whenever you play those buildings. There's a track for the 4 different kind of buildings. And if you can upgrade how many victory points you get for placing them. And then there's 3 different resources that once you have them out, you can start spinning dice to trade with those. And it's kind of like you're building an engine. If there's more on the table, then you could trade in a 6 die and trade with the 6 spice tiles, for example, if you have that many. But they have to be there for you to trade with them.
So you got to build that up to be able to use that board to trade with to help you play better on the worker placement side.
Correct. And so what kind of happened with me whenever I wanted to get those provinces built up, I kept having to buy the really cheap ones because my dice were so cruddy. The person that won, not only did she have a lot of province tiles, but they were like the expensive ones that cost like in the teens because she was able to combine dice and get high numbers. I was combining dice and getting like a 5, with my cruddy rolls.
So you built a slum.
Yeah.
She had like the higher end neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in that.
It really is. It's a lot, but it's once you understand what to do, it's fairly intuitive. The iconography is pretty good. There's just a few things I had to re-ask what they meant. So definitely after a play, I've completely gotten it down. I highly recommend it, especially with it being so cheap right now on Amazon.
Yeah, on the BGG here, it's got a 7.7 rating. It's ranked 150 overall, 107 out of strategy games. It says 2 to 4 players, weights a 2.88, and says 45 to 75 minutes on the playtime. So how long did your game take? Do you remember?
I would say, probably about 75. It was on the upper end. It was a 4-player game.
Okay,
and one person, the guy who owned it, he knew it, but the other 2 players had only played it one time, and I had never played it. So we were mostly newbies at it, so it made sense it took the higher amount of time, but it definitely didn't outstay its welcome. I know at first it felt like it was gonna, because that silver track, I think it's maybe like 120 spaces, and the fame is 60. And so that's a lot of movement you got to do for those 2 to intersect. But once the engine started getting built, I mean, you're moving up there. Well, not me, but the other players were moving up a lot.
They were leapfrogging up the track, not you.
Right.
Got it.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, still one I definitely want to play, even with dice. I'll give it a pass on the dice, but as long as there's some ways to mitigate, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'll have to get this played. I know Dan's got it over at Your Turn here locally, and I've seen it on the shelf several times. And I've mentioned I know Muhammad in our group knows how to play, and he's been wanting to teach it. So, or I've been begging him to teach it one way or the other.
So It's got some cool components too, even though the dice are, in my opinion, a little wonky. The first player token is like a little elephant, and I don't know if it's meant to be like this, but the meeple fits perfectly on its back. It's got like a little gap between its legs. And I would put my meeple on the elephant.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was nice.
Cool.
All right,
And I know they have a roll and write version that came out more recently.
Yes.
I'm not big into roll and writes, but just if people are into that out there.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to end this call down. We're done.
Yeah, so speaking of rolling rights, I'll go ahead and jump in with my first game of the week.
Go ahead, Rob, because I got a rolling right in here too.
Oh, do
right?
you? Oh, yeah, I've got a pair of them that I want to talk about, but I got a chance this weekend. We met up. Was Dan and I and Michael from our gaming group met up over at Your Turn. They were closed this last week because Dan and the family were the family was on vacation. Dan got left behind, so he was looking for something to do. But we got a chance to play a game that Michael likes a lot, and he's talked about it for, a year now, about how much he likes this game. And he's kind of the king of roll and writes in our group. He loves roll and writes. He can't get enough of them. Every time one hits Kickstarter, it seems like he's jumping on it. But Cartographers is one that I had never played, and I'm a little late to the game on this one. This one's been out a little while, but he brought that, and we actually met up to play Cartographers, even though we got another roll and write in that I'll talk about in a few minutes that I know Carlos has been itching to play. But Cartographers was a lot of fun. It was more fun than I expected. We actually got my daughter, Emmy, 15-year-old, 15-year-old to play that one with us, and she was a little reluctant, but she jumped in, so the four of us played. Cartographers is a game where you are mapping out a kingdom, and it's set in kind of like a D&D, Dungeons and Dragons type universe.
Fantasy world,
yeah. And so what it is everybody's got a little map of just a grid coordinates, basically with squares on it, and you're flipping cards. You play through 4 different seasons, so winter, summer, spring, and fall. And each one you are scoring. You've got 4 random scoring conditions that you pull out each game out of a deck, and you set their A, B, C, and D. And so the way the game works is like if you start in, it starts in, I think, summer. I can't recall for sure, but you play through them in order. But it starts in, let's say, summer, and in summer you're going to score cards A and B. So you're only scoring those conditions for A and B. And then the next season, if you go into fall, you'll score B and C, and then C and D, and then the last season you'll score the last 2. You'll go D and then back to A. So each card that you pull, each of those scoring conditions will get scored twice. But again, you're kind of looking at that. So part of it, you're looking at the long strategy. You're trying to figure out, all right, how am I going to do this to, by the time I get back to the A at the end of the game when I'm scoring D and A, that I can have that condition maxed out so I can get as many points as I can for that. But along the way at the beginning, again, each step you're trying to maximize what you can do on those. It took me a full game before I realized that we weren't coming back to B and C again. We went back around, so I was still working on some of those. And then they were like, don't you realize we're not going to score those anymore? You can kind of hold off on building, those rivers or those farmlands. But in the game, you've got, I think it's 6 different types of terrain. You've got, there's water, there's farmlands, there's residential areas, there's mountains. I'm missing a couple here, but in any case, these cards are going to flip up, and they're going to have little Tetris, polyomino shapes at the bottom, and then there's usually going to be a selection that you can choose from a couple of different types of terrain. And so what you're doing is on your grid, on your map that you're mapping out this new region, you're drawing in the Tetris shape, and then you're filling that in with one of the terrain types that you're allowed to choose for that particular card. And as you're doing that, you're trying to meet these conditions. And so it may be like one of the cards we had, you score all of your farmland areas that are not touching a water area, and also that are not touching any border of the outside of the map. So you're trying to get them in central locations, but then you're trying to put them in locations where they're not touching anything, and you got like a point for every independent area that you scored. And so you're trying to do that, and you're kind of doing this Tetris game and laying these out. The really unique part of this game that really sets it aside from a lot of other roll and writes in the past is the player interaction that this game allows. And roll and writes don't typically have much, if any, player interaction. And the really cool thing is each of the seasons that you play through, you have 4 monster cards that you set aside at the beginning of the game. You draw them randomly out of a deck as well. And in the first season, you add 1 and you shuffle the deck and you play through. You may or may not hit that monster card. The way each season triggers is each season season has a number on the top of it. Like I think summer was 8, and so you draw these cards randomly, and as you draw on the cards, they all have a number on the top of them. It could be a 0, could be a 1, could be a 2, but you keep playing cards in that season until you hit the season's total or exceed the season's total, and then after you finish that card, then you finish that season, and then you score, and then you move to the next season. You do the same thing, but in the first season you put one of these monsters in the deck. The second season you add a second one. The third you'll have 3 of them in there, and the fourth you'll have 4 of them in there. And each time you're shuffling these up, and what happens is when a monster card is drawn, it will again give you a little polyomino shape, a little Tetris shape at the bottom of the card, but then you have to draw. It'll show you that you either pass to the left or you pass to the right. And so everybody takes their sheet and hands it either to the person on their left or the person on their right, and the person gets to draw that shape and fill it in with little monster symbols. And what that does is, number one, they're messing with you. They're trying to mess up your patterns that you're putting together to score points. But then the other thing is, at the end of each season, you get a negative point for every monster that's not surrounded on all 4 sides. We don't do diagonals. It's just what's the term? Orthogonal. There we go. Jumped out of my head there. The orthogonals. So you have to have filled in. Monsters can cover monsters or whatever. So you're trying to mess with your opponents. You're trying to put them in bad shape, in bad spaces to mess with the designs they're trying to do. But then you're also trying to put them in places where they are out in the open, so that your opponent then, when they get the sheet back, after you draw it on, you give everybody their sheet back, and then you keep drawing cards. They're now trying to surround these monsters so they don't get the negative points. So that's even more messing with the other things they were trying to do as far as fulfilling these requirements to score the points. And so that was really unique. I don't know. I haven't played a whole lot of roll and writes or flip and writes. This one being a flip and write, there's not actually dice, so you're flipping cards. But I've played a handful of them. I've played 5 or 6 or 7 of them now. And I don't know that I've really ever played one with player interaction. I don't know at all. Or again, if so, it's been very minimal player interaction. And this one, I know Carlos was a little bit interested in it specifically for that, because he enjoys anything with a little bit of interaction, a little bit of combat, a little bit of messing with your neighbor. And so it was fun. We actually played it, and then we reset it immediately. It's short. I think we got it in probably with the teach game. It was probably 15 or 20 minutes. And then after we were done, we decided to reset it. My daughter was all in the second time. She's like, oh yeah, that was fun. Let's do that again. So we reset it and we played it a second time, and we had a good time. I won the first one, I think it was, and Dan finished a distant last, and then it completely flip-flopped the second game. I finished a distant last, and then he won. So it was pretty funny, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to playing it again. And again, it's so quick. It's one that you can just play, reset a couple of times. You can play 2-3 times in an hour for sure.
I'm interested in this one because when Michael brought it up, he talked about the direct interaction in the game.
Yeah.
That idea of like taking somebody's player board that they took time to physically draw.
Yeah.
Right. So this isn't like a game where you check boxes. I think silver and gold. Right. You're just putting an X on different spots.
Check marks.
You're literally drawing like little trees. I've never played this before. I'm just looking at it.
There's little forest areas
or little mountains. Right. So you're creating your own map, and it brings out 12-year-old Carlos from like middle school days when I drew my D&D maps.
Yeah.
You know. So here's this thing you worked on. And then I come in and I draw some nasty, gnarly monster smack in the middle of somewhere.
And it's funny, the grown. The first time we played, we went the whole first season with no monsters coming out. So me and my daughter, especially, who had never played before, we're like, oh, okay, cool. We avoided the monster. But then the second round, I think we drew both of the monsters. And so when they come out, everybody's like, oh, no, I just needed one more forest area to score this whole area. Now I know that when I give this over to my opponent, they're going to place a monster right in the middle of that. I'm never going to connect those 2 areas to get that 6 points that I was going for. So yeah, the groans around the table were funny. Yeah.
Now, I hope there's no judgment based on how good the drawing is, right? Because if so, I would not be good at this game.
Not particularly. I got a little, when you draw the little monster, the little picture they show you is just a monster's head with some horns. And so I'm like, I'm just going to draw smiley faces. And so I got a little ridiculed for that. They're like, no, you can't draw smiley faces. This is a monster. So I drew a smiley face with horns on it. So I dressed it up a little bit. But no.
Those creative folks, they would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems a little puzzly. We've talked about how you and I aren't big fans of puzzly games. How does that go?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a Calico is the one that always jumps to mind. That was a puzzle game that I just really did not enjoy. And I think I've talked about it before. That Calico, I didn't enjoy that because it seemed like one mistake in that was so penalizing. If you made one mistake, you could screw up like 2 or 3 of the patterns you were working on. You could almost, with one bad placement, you could almost take your game, take yourself out of the game. Maybe not that penal, but it felt like that. It felt like you're really grinding through. You're spending a lot of time just staring at your board. This one seems like a lot more lighthearted, and maybe because it's only 15 or 20 minutes, and you play through those seasons so quick, and you've got 4 different scoring requirements, so you're kind of jumping around. You're trying to do a little of this, a little of that, and one mistake, or having to pass that sheet around to your opponent. It was kind of funny. I know when I passed it to Dan, I would kind of look over his shoulder, and I was like, "Ooh, don't put it there! Don't put it there! Don't put it there!" And so you're kind of, there's that little bit of angst in it, but it's all kind of fun. And it's like when he would slam it down, he'd give it back to me. He's like, that was the best spot I could have put that. I really screwed up your game. So it was more lighthearted. So yeah, I didn't get that brain burny, that staring at my sheet for 10 minutes trying to figure out. The turns really moved quick, and the squares are nice and large, so you've got kind of room to be a little artistic if you want. Draw.
I wasn't sure of the scale of the board or the paper that you get.
Yeah,
it's big enough to actually.
It is. Yeah, it was big enough. The little forest areas. I just kind of drew 3 little circles with 3 little stems on them or whatever. But there's enough room to be a little creative. And I've heard of people play it with colored pencils. So like if you draw a forest area, you just shade it in green. If it's a yellow, maybe for a farmland area.
No, if you go to the BGG,
way to fun.
Yeah.
If you go to BGG and look at the pictures of the game, the majority of the pictures are people's drawings of the game, right? Not even the game itself. They're just proud of the map that they drew, and that cartographers word super kicks in.
Okay, and I know that's a big
good
appeal.
Marketing.
Yeah, I was just saying, I know that's a big appeal for you. I don't know if you were thinking along that line, but I know you've mentioned in the past that a lot of times when you play, especially these engine builders and things, sometimes for you it fades away. The game itself, if you finish last or whatever, it doesn't matter so much. But when you look at the end, like, hey, look what I just drew. This little kingdom I just put together is that would be up your alley for sure for that part of it. Yeah.
I just picked up the zombie kids.
Another one to add to the list. Yeah.
That's another one to add to the list. And
now, Rob, I've not played it, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Ahead.
There's a slight delay. But I've seen people play it, and so I know it's billed as a role player tale, which we know Carlos fell asleep during because that's in the checkbook. I see it shares some of the iconography, like the stars and things. Are there any mechanics at all that transfer over that you can think of?
There really aren't, to be honest, until you just mentioned. I remembered now that was billed that way, but I really didn't see any parallels at all. I'm a fan of role player. I've played a decent amount. I own the game, and I've played that 4, 5, 6 times now. So I really didn't see any. You're right. Some of the stars and things, like for just the symbol for victory points or whatever, is the same. But other than that, I don't really see any of the mechanics or even much of the feeling of the world carrying over. Now I think maybe the art on the cards.
Is this all that's set in the same world of role player?
It is, I think, theoretically. Okay. Yeah. Like I say, I didn't feel that strongly when I played, and to be honest, again, I had completely even forgotten about that while I was even playing it. But in hindsight, I do remember that was billed that way. I'm seeing here, like you said, now I'm looking at the BGG.
Yeah, the stars look similar.
Yeah. Yep. So, but no, as far as any of the mechanics, I really didn't see anything that carried over. But yeah, I see what you're talking about now, Carlos, with the drawings here. I see some of these crazy sheets people have filled out.
But that's what makes me want to play. Yeah, looking at those drawings, it's like, ooh, I want to draw a map of a land.
You let your artistic side flow a little bit, your fun side flow.
It's a terribly artistic side, but it's fun.
Yeah, some colored pencils really, I see, would really dress this up. So just real quick, the BGG, it's a 7.7 rating. It's overall ranked 114. Wow, I'm a little surprised by that for a flipping right. Family rated game, it's number 14 overall. Says 30 to 45 minutes, but I swear both of those games we played were well under 30 minutes. We played through them pretty quick. It's 1 to 100 players. I heard them say it's only advertised 100 because the sheets they give you in the game are 100, but otherwise, you could play with as many people as you want.
Just like every other roll and write.
Yeah, pretty much every roll and write. You can just laminate some sheets and play over and over and over again. But I would definitely recommend it. It says age 10 and up. The community says age 8 and up. I think I would agree with that. It's definitely a light enough game. Again, young kids aren't going to completely get the strategy on it, but it's fun to draw on.
$21 on Amazon.
Yeah, it's not expensive. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just a deck of cards. And
proceed to checkout.
Yeah, there you go. Another purchase this evening live.
Oh, man.
But that's Cartographers. I definitely would recommend a 2019 release. And if you're into flipping rights, rolling rights, 20, 30 minute long family weight game, I would definitely recommend it.
So when it comes to the scoring objectives for Cartographers is what really stood out for me. And the reason I say that is because of the A, B, scoring in the first season. Second season is BC. Third season is CD. And in the fourth and final season, you're scoring D and A, which are the different objectives.
Yep.
It kind of brings me to the Wingspan feeling of it, right? So I play a lot of Wingspan on the digital with the Switch.
Yep.
But Wingspan has their objective each of the 4 rounds, right?
Yeah.
One of the negative feelings I get from that is all that work you put into one of those objectives.
One round and gone.
You'll never. You can put all those eggs in the water area, but they're never going to score for you again.
Yeah.
The idea that you will come back and score the A.
Yeah.
Right. Or the B will score in 2 seasons. Maybe gives you a little more good feelings, like that work wasn't for just one time of scoring.
Yeah, and there were times like in the summer season, so when we're scoring A the first time, maybe it was a water-based objective, and we flipped, maybe 5 or 6 cards, and there was only one with water on it. And I was like, oh, well, that was a bummer. So then as you're going to the next couple seasons, when you're not scoring A, you may get a bunch of water cards, so then you have to make those trade-off decisions. It's like, oh, okay, well, I know water is going to come up again at the very end of the game, so do I start connecting those water areas to, like, sometimes it may score for your largest water area, however many are touching, in your largest water area, or it may be, separate water areas that you have to have them divided or separated into different parts of the board or whatever. So as you're playing through, you kind of start thinking, okay, can I now that all this water's coming up, can I combine that maybe with another objective that I'm going to score this time, where I need to put water adjacent or farmlands adjacent to water or something like that? And you can kind of start thinking ahead down the road, like, oh, that's going to come back up. And the really interesting thing again, is that, again, most of the cards you have 2 or 3 of the terrain types you can choose from. So it's like, oh, I know water's going to come back up. And although we're getting a bunch of water cards now, again, I've got this farmland objective that we're scoring now. Do I choose the farmland for this, or do I, which may only be a point per square, but then water, when that comes back, when we get back to A, is maybe 2 points per square. So there's a lot of little decisions to make in it. But again, getting back to what Mitchell was asking about the puzzliness of it, I don't know, for some reason it just felt light, and none of our decisions seemed to take a long time. And I tend to be a little on the AP side. Carlos gives me credit for being a lot on the AP side.
I'm shocked.
We have friends who are much more AP than I am. But in any case, even I didn't feel like any decision I was really burning my brain over. So it was fairly light and fun. Yeah.
Cartographers, it sounds like you recommend it.
2 thumbs up.
I hope so, because when I just punched in buy now.
Oh, okay. No, I hated it. I just tricked you.
No. Amazon's got my money.
The same right here, maybe.
Yeah.
21 something on Amazon.
Yeah,
that's nothing.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not, and it's worth it.
That's like a meal for 2 folks at lunch.
So you buy it and I'll teach you.
There you go, Robert.
Yeah.
You'll teach it. And continuing on with the roll and write, flip and fill, as we try to convince Mitchell over there that he's wrong.
Oh.
Hey, Rob did a good job of convincing me just now.
There you go. All right.
I got to play some Railroad Inc.
Okay.
Railroad Inc. is a game from 2018. Robert and I played a lot of it when it first came out, especially when I first got it during the COVID time when things were locked down. We played via Zoom. People played with us online. Together. In Railroad Inc., what you're doing is you're playing the role of like a civil engineer. Exciting, right? Yay. And what you're trying to do is build these routes of highways and railroads on a board. So you're going to have a board. It's a grid board. It's squares. On the perimeter of this board, you're going to have these network icons. So these arrows. These are different networks. You got 3 on the top, 3 on the sides, and 3 on the bottom of this square. And the goal is to create networks by connecting those network icons to each other through either railroad or highway. The way you place them down is by rolling 4 dice. At the beginning of the turn, you're going to roll 4 dice, and it's going to give you different pictures to say, all right, these are the ones you can draw. So it might be a stretch of straight highway, or it might be a highway that bends. It might be a railroad or a junction that takes you, a station that takes you from railroad to highway. So you got to figure out how to draw these 4 icons onto your map each turn, starting on the edge of the board, because it has to be connected to a network. You can't just randomly place them anywhere. And you're going to do this for 7 rounds. Each round, you're going to roll the 4 dice, and you're going to draw those icons on the board to try to create these networks. At the end of the game, you're going to score yourself based on how well you did that. So you're going to score, number 1, for the amount of networks you created. So what you're looking to do is connect multiple networks into one network. What I mean by that is, so if there's 3 on one side and you can connect one highway that touches all 3 of those networks, you're going to score more points because it's exponential scoring than if you just connected 2 networks together with one road. Now, if you can get and connect 9 different network icons together through either a highway system or a rail or a combination of the 2 that touch, so you kind of like draw these lines effectively together that touch each other to try to create this one bigger network that has multiple exits together, that's going to score you the big exponential points, right? And then you're going to score for your longest highway. So you go and you count how many spaces you were able to connect a highway, kind of like a longest road in Catan. You're going to score your longest railroad, so how long of a railroad track were you able to draw. And then you're going to score for the center spaces. There's 9 spaces in the center of the board, a 3x3 area, that you get a bonus point for each of those spaces that are filled in. Once you've done that, you check for your errors. And this is the fun part, is you should not have a road that just goes nowhere, right? So if any road or railway just ends on a space that doesn't connect to anything, that's an error, -1 point, right? So the goal of the game is to build them in such a way that they end up somewhere. You can maybe abut that road to the edge of the board, right? That's good. Going to the edge of the board, it goes somewhere. We can imagine it continues on. But if it just kind of goes into the middle of the board and doesn't touch anything, that's a -1. And you play those for 7 rounds. You get some special icons that you can place. So these special junctions, I think you can play 3 of them per game, right? So you got some special, real cool, awesome like railroad stations that connect a bunch of stuff together. You get to do 3 of those a game, and then you add it up and you get your score. You can play it solo. You can play it with 100 players, right? That's what we talked about with roll rights.
Yeah.
What I like about it is it's fast. There's a plays in about 30 minutes or less. It's puzzly, right? But not brain burny puzzly. It's more chill. I don't know how to describe it. It's so relaxing. It's just kind of, you're just drawing with your dry erase marker, little highways, connecting them to little railroads, and kind of connecting your dots, and just kind of seeing how you do against yourself. What's really cool about it is they take these expansions in each box. So there's a blue box and there's a red box. I was playing the red box. The red box has an expansion where you can add these volcano dice, where depending on what you roll, lava starts to flow from different volcanoes and can maybe eat up one of the railways or the roads
that you already built. Yeah.
Or you play the meteor expansion, where meteors fly in and will destroy something that you've already, drew on, right? Because
like a hole,
right? It randomly goes through, so you gotta kind of figure out how to get past those. But it's one of my go-to roll and writes, especially if I'm playing solo, because it's just so chill. It's so relaxed. That's Railroad Inc. by Cool Mini or Not.
And I'll tell you.
So what we were saying.
Go ahead. I was just to say that this one got for me, bothered me a little bit with all the drawing. And so I'll say you'd mentioned how chill it was with the little dry erase. Having to make those little connections with the roads and the railroads. I mean, you don't have to be precise, but that got my AP going a little bit. It's like, I got to make this connect just right on the little square so that it looks right. But what were you going to say, Mitchell?
What we were saying a while ago about Cartographers, about how there's player interaction, this seems like a game where there's 0 to none. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is the solo version basically just the same as everything
You're
else
wrong,
except...
because you said to none. There is it's
none.
just 0. It's just
zero.
none. There's no range there.
There's no maybe a little bit now.
So again, this is one I haven't played, but I've seen it, and I don't remember the name of it. It reminds me of this. I think it was a game I had on my phone back in the day, where like you had to connect the pipes to make the water go from the source to somewhere else. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what it's like?
That's the
like
feeling.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little puzzly. This one got my AP going a little more than Cartographers. It wasn't too bad. You mentioned chill, so I don't want to completely step on that. But this is one that I remember, and again, it's been a little while since I've played it, but I remember I had some decision points where I kind of sat there and looked, and it's like, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to connect this to that to this? So you're really trying to make connect those edges of the board, and then sometimes you got those scoring things by getting in that middle section and getting as many routes and things across there as you could.
I think the AP really comes from because you have to draw. You have to. It's not an option.
Yeah.
You must draw the 4 spaces. Do you put it in a place where you're risking, like, I think I can make that connection, But if you don't, now you've got a negative, right? And then as you get to that last couple of rounds, you know you're not going to make that connection. So how do I mitigate how many endpoints come from that are kind of just trailing or falling off the road without a, with a dead end effectively? Now, how do you mitigate those? So that can really get a little AP. I get that piece.
And I'll tell you, I'm looking at the pictures just flashing back and forth here on BGG between Railroad Inc. and Cartographers, and it confirms what I think I knew here, is that Railroad Inc. has quite a few less squares on the board than Cartographers. Cartographers is much more open, and then maybe that's why it was an easier feeling for me, is again, Railroad Inc. is a little bit more down the road of, if I place something in the wrong spot, it might screw up a bunch of my scoring. Cartographers was a little freer. It's like, I could just throw this over here, a little happy little bush over here, a little happy little field over there, and I'll connect stuff up later.
Like Bob Ross.
Yeah, there you go, little Bob Ross. It was a little more chill, but I think you're going to really like Cartographers if you like Railroad Inc. for that chill feeling. I think Cartographers gives you even more of that. So, but yeah, Railroad Inc. I remember I enjoyed it, and us playing online. You just it's such a easy game to share. You just loaned me a couple of your boards, and then we just played over
Zoom.
Over Zoom, yeah. Just as long as somebody can see the dice that are being rolled, you can just play that way.
I think we still have videos on the channel of our plays of that, were for people to go back and play through our dice rolls.
Yeah,
because you can print
that's a good idea.
You can print the boards online for free.
And I was going to ask you, you've heard about the new version, right? They're coming out with a version now that's it's made for doing that. It's you play the game and it saves. I don't remember if it's digital. I don't know a whole lot about it. I was trying to find it here on the BGG, but it saves all your stuff, and then you just push a button and it uploads your game, and then other people you can share it with your friends or whatever, and then they can play through the same exact thing, and it does all the scoring for you, and then it will compare your scores and do a leaderboard and everything online for you automatically. So
yeah, because we went through a whole run of the Welcome Twos and the Railroad Inks where we posted them on the channel and told people to, hey, comment below what score you got,
right?
So that we can kind of create that ladder.
I like that.
That was at the height of the pandemic when we were trying to find something we could get
something
online.
to do.
Yeah, something to do between
stir
us.
crazy.
Yeah, something we could let other people get in on.
Now, Mitchell, I want to come back to your Rajas of the Ganges. When I looked at that player board on the side, the Carcassonne board, as you use it, I think is a technical term, Carcassonne. Carcassonne.
It's a term now.
That's officially in the dictionary.
Yeah,
it sounds like an awesome appetizer.
Yeah.
But outside of that,
side of Carcassonne,
it kind of reminded me of Railroad Inc.'s network connections, because you talked about building these roads that connected different endpoints on the perimeter.
Yeah.
Do you get bonuses for connecting? In gachas?
Yeah, to some of them you do, but the difference is that's not the whole game. That's an aspect of the game, whereas it seems like that's the entire game in Railroad Inc., right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So, I mean, if you like Railroad Inc., Rajas of the Ganges has to be better because it's Railroad Inc. Plus.
So this might be a good stepping stone for people to play like a Railroad Inc. That way they can better understand how that sideboard works on a Rajas
of the Ganges. Yep, there you go.
Yeah. Hindu is not my first name.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I would think between the two of you guys' games, I mean, mechanically they have some similarities with the roll or flipping right, but there's a million trend games out there. I haven't heard of another game thematically that's about making maps. Have y'all? That seems pretty unique to me.
Yeah, it was. And again, being a kind of a takeoff of the role player, it kind of went in a different direction. Again, I can kind of see where they're in the same world a little bit, but yeah, very different game. Yeah, it's not balancing the checkbook as Carlos compared role player to, but I'll never let that go.
No, you won't. But, and the fact that I fell asleep. No.
And before we jump off,
I just love the meta game of role player.
Oh yeah,
you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're creating a Dungeons and Dragons
character. Yeah,
I love it.
Absolutely.
Who owns it? Do we own it? You own it.
Role player? Yeah,
you're going to have to give me we need to do like a second chance thing. Like I need a second chance viticulture. I need a second chance.
They're doing on Dice Tower.
Role player. We got a second chance it.
And real quick on Railroad Inc., just before we get off of it, it's 7.3 rating on the BGG, overall rating 468, family weight 94. It says 1 to 6 players. I don't know why you couldn't play with more, but 1 to 6.
The limitation of the boards, but just print out more, you'll be fine.
Okay, so it's 20 to 30 minutes. Weight is a 1.48. Publisher Horrible Guild. So
I think mine was Kumini or Not version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think Simon created him as well.
Gotcha.
So that was Railroad Inc. for me. We'll pass to left of dealer. Mitchell, you're up. Any other games you want to spotlight that you played?
Ooh, I played a lot of games this week. I'm just going to list them real quick to kind of flaunt them. After the Empire, obviously, Rajas of the Ganges. 2 games of Lost Ruins of Arnak. Reef, Blood Rage, Red Rising, Brass Birmingham, Root, Carcassonne, and then the one I want to spotlight. It's actually designed by my buddy Jay Bell. It's his first published game. I actually played it with him and also play tested a nice demo version of one of his other games a couple times called Frogs and Rain, which is set in Louisiana. But this game is called Spotlight. It's published by Jack of Peace Games. It was just published this year. It's a card game. Now, I'm not usually too hot on card-only games, but what I like about Spotlight is that it doesn't feel so much like a card game. It feels a little bit more like a board game, even though there's no board, because each round, I think it's 4 kind of like goals or locations are flipped out, and you're playing cards kind of to those locations. So it feels like there's a board, even though it's just literally cards. And so the idea is there are 4 suits, and the suits obviously have different numbers, and you get a hand. And it's a 2-player game. So essentially, you know exactly what your opponent's hand is because it's whatever you don't have. And you pick a suit to be your suit. You are going to discard some cards, so there's not perfect knowledge. But whatever suit you pick, that is your suit. You pick a card from that suit and you keep it. And no matter what happens, you are going to get as many points as your suit's number on that one card. So then you're playing to these different locations. You're taking turns playing cards. And so the idea is that you want to have your card have the most added up numerical value in each of those locations to win the victory points there. But you don't want to let your opponent know what your suit is. So there's a lot of counterpicking involved because your opponent knows exactly what your hand is by deduction. So he's going to assume you're going to pick the one that you have the highest values in. But then if you do that, he's expecting that. So then do you pick the second most one, And there's only 4 suits. So it's very likely, first of all, you can both have the same suit, which means no one gets points, which is kind of cool. But also, you have to play all your cards other than the couple that you discard. So you're having to play cards of suits that may be for the opponent or suits that no one has chosen. And so you have to really play the long game, even though the mechanics are very simple. It's a really mind-bending game in a fun way that it's like, okay, if I'm putting down this gray 5 and I'm not gray, I'm going to have to make sure I can come back and beat 5, because if it's a tie, it's a wash with my purple cards, say. And each location can only have 5 cards. So a lot of times what you do is like you have it set up, and then whenever it's your turn, you lock that location with a card of your suit, since nobody can beat it. The problem is if you lock that in too early, then you're basically advertising, hey, this is my color, don't let it get too much on the other locations. So it's a really thinky game. I like it. And there's 3 rounds. So the thing I like about that is once you pick a suit, if you accidentally kind of give away what your suit is, you're not screwed for the rest of the game, because next time you can pick a different suit. And some of the locations have special abilities, like one of them says, actually you want to be the lowest number in this location. One of them says every other card is flipped face down. One of them says you can play 6 cards to this one. So it's a light but thinky game. It's a card game. It's literally just a deck of cards. But it feels more board gamery. There is a print and play version for a lot cheaper on the website, or you can order a hard copy. They just finished the crowd sale, which was, I don't want to say Kickstarter-y, but basically they said, we're doing this sale. The more orders we get, the cheaper it can be. So we'll update you as orders come through. So they have, and that'll be coming in a couple months, but you could order it today if you want for the list price, which is a little bit more expensive. But yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I was just looking it up to see where I could buy it. I was pushing the buy button to figure out where to buy it, because it hit off on some notes there. I feel like I'm talking about like a good, bourbon. I get some notes and some hints of
some maple
Twilight Struggle. Like I got some hints of Twilight Struggle in there. Now, first of all, I'll just throw it out there. Robert and I are huge trick-taking fans.
Oh, yeah.
So you're talking about a trick-taking game right off the bat. Okay,
sure. Yeah.
Interest is piqued. Then he started talking about the plane of the complete knowledge. Right, so complete knowledge of what each other has.
Deduction, yeah. Reminds
me of the Twilight Struggle aspect of when you've played it enough. Twilight Struggle is the Cold War game where you each play a certain deck or a certain side, either U.S. or USSR, right? And then you're going to play cards that either benefit you or benefit your opponents. You're going to have cards in your hands that benefit both of you, the key to winning Twilight Struggle is playing your beneficial card when it benefits you the most, while playing your opponent's beneficial card when it benefits them the least.
Yeah.
Right, Chuck?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the hint that I got out of it. The feeling that I got out of it is, okay, I know this card really helps Robert. Where can I put it that it helps him the least?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, spotlights like that.
And I get a little bit of feel of smash up when I'm even just looking here, because you've got the different locations and you mentioned the different kind of powers or abilities that each one have. And that reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if you've ever played the smash up card game, but you're playing to these bases, these different level areas that are out there. And some of them may say every card of this type gets a +1, or every, or may reverse the scoring conditions, or
You can't play this type of card here in this location. So the locations with special abilities.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on here in what looks like literally just a deck of cards, and I like the graphic design.
Yeah.
It's got this kind of a abstracty, clean.
Yeah, it's fairly minimal. Yeah. It's got some,
Another thing, I can't believe I completely forgot about it. That's what the game is named after, the spotlight card. So each player has 2 cards that they can put under a card perpendicular to change the suit to whatever your suit is. But the other player doesn't know what your suit is. It's just, hey, I know it says gray on here. Maybe it's gray. Maybe it's purple. It's whatever my face down card is over here, and I'll tell you what that is at the end of the round. So you can do a little bit more without giving yourself away. And sometimes I like to kind of, if I don't have a better use for it, kind of use it as a trick, saying my suit is yellow. I'm going to put it on a yellow card so he doesn't think that my suit is yellow. Like I'm trying to change this yellow to something else. So that adds a lot of depth. Those 2 spotlight cards each person gets.
So even though you got the perfect knowledge there of what your opponent's got, you've got the little twist there at the end that you can mess with them a little bit. So yeah.
Which is needed, and especially in a game with a lot of knowledge of what your opponent has, the ability to mess with them, to change that up is where the equalizer, I think, the leveling of the playing field.
For sure.
Because otherwise, Robert would beat me every time intellectually.
Oh, sure.
I just roll dice better.
Yeah, something like that.
And that spotlight, it looks like it's Jack of Peace Games.
That's correct. Yep.
Jack of Peace Games. I'm pulling up their website now. I'll put a link in the description below.
Cool. Yeah, he's the co-designer, and he has a lot more games in the works. Like I said, I play tested one of his other games. It's a little bit more of a family weight game, and he's got some cool things in the works. I'm excited for him.
And even gives me a hint now that I'm thinking about it of, was it Air, Land, and Sea? Is that the right order on that one?
Air, Land, and Sea has 3 locations, air, land, and sea, that you're fighting for, and you're playing cards back and forth to get power in those locations.
Yeah, it's a little different.
It's not as much perfect knowledge of what the opponent has, so it's drawing of cards, so a lot of the cards aren't going to be in your hand. And that one, I think, is great because it has the retreat mentality.
Right. Yeah.
You try to lose less.
That's right. Yeah.
You
can retreat early if you know you're going to lose, and you lose less points than if you stick it out to the end and then you end up getting beat, then you lose more points. So, yeah. Interesting. Cool.
Spotlight, Jack of Peace Games. That's a good one.
Yeah. Sounds like fun. Yep.
Rob, anything you wanted to highlight that you played?
Yeah, I didn't play a whole lot, not nearly as much as Mitchell this week. So
makes you feel sad, don't it?
I know. I'll try to fix that next time. But I did play a game that we have talked about in a couple of prior podcasts, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I know a game that I am now itching to teach you. I've got to play Hadrian's Wall. So this was the same night I met up with Mike and Dan over at Your Turn. So we played 2 games of Cartographers, and then I noticed sitting over behind Michael on the next table was a copy of Hadrian's Wall. I said, "Ooh, Hadrian's Wall, huh?" And he's like, "Yeah, you want to get in a game?" And so Dan and I were both, we definitely want to learn this game. And so he pulled it out. He took a deep breath and he said, "All right, this is going to be about a 30 to 45 minute teach." He goes, "But once we get it taught, it's fairly intuitive. There is a lot going on in this game, and so I'm not breaking any new ground here by saying that. I mean, that's been the thing they advertise, is that this is a flip and write, so it's another in that roll and write, flip and write series. But this is a lot closer to a full-blown board game than a lot of those would be. And let me just start off with some of the BGG information on it real quick here. It's 8.2 on the rating. It's overall 1,371. Strategy is 647. I'm going to say a lot of that is because it's probably a new game, and probably because it's intimidated a lot of people who just haven't tried it because of
people like me,
because of what they heard,
who bought it and it's sitting on the shelf.
Yep.
Because I opened it up and was like, "Whoa." Put it right back.
1 to 6 players, 30 to 60 minutes. The weight is a 3.14, so it moves into that orange on the weight there on BGG. And I would say that that's warranted. There is a lot going on, and this was a good 30 to 45 minute teach of a mic going over. You've got 2 large sheets that you tear off and you give to each person. There's a little cardboard player board that you assemble at the top. This has got a fair number of little wooden bits that go with it, the resources that you're trading, workers that you're gathering and you're using up every round. So this game, again, you're going to get me here on theme, but there's a lot going on. You're kind of building an economy. You're building a city here. You have a wall that you're having to defend in each of the 6 rounds from attackers that are going to come. Reminds me a lot of After the Empire that I see here on the shelf. Yeah, each round.
There's no physical wall. How do you name a game? Wall. You don't build a wall.
There's got to be a wall. But that's what your top board. You've got. They're part of the top board. You've got these 3 areas that you're defending. It's left, right, or center. And so each one, at the end of every round of the 6 rounds, you're drawing out a certain number of cards. There's easy, medium, and hard difficulty levels. And so depending on which difficulty your level you're playing, that's how many cards you're going to draw at the end of each round. And you're going to have these number of attackers that come, and any attackers that you can't fend off from round to round is going to have you taking some negative points at the end of the round. There's some mitigation of that. There's some areas on the worker placement side or of the coloring inside. You're coloring in a lot of stuff on this little sheets that you have, but you can mitigate that. You can build some. I think they were the Roman baths. If you build up your Roman baths, you can then start negating some of those stress points that you take, I forget what they call them, from the attackers that you couldn't defend from. So you can start taking some of those away. But there's a lot of areas. There's a market side, a sheet that's all market. That's I'm just looking here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different areas that you can use certain types of workers to go and start building up either the markets, or you've got courthouses, you've got the bathhouses, you've got parks that you can build up. There's a whole sheet that's just dedicated to kind of like building up your city. The left side of your sheet is all about, your left sheet, I should say, is all about your defenses. You're building up the wall, you're recruiting fighters and things to fend off these attacks that are going to be coming. You've got 4 tracks down at the bottom of the sheet that as you do different things, you're going to start marking off on these tracks. And as you go up these tracks, they're going to get you different benefits and advantages. The game is, and I've heard a lot of people say this, but it truly is combo-tastic. If you enjoy doing one thing that gets you something else, that allows you to color in something over there, that's going to get you another worker that you can then spend over there to then bump up this track to get some more points. You can go and get some resources that you can then help to build your wall. I mean, it's the first round, as a lot of these games starts off a little slow. You're going to get a certain number of resources. Everybody starts with basically the same resources. You're going to flip a card, and at the bottom, it's going to tell you there's 8 resources that everybody's going to take, and everybody's going to take exactly those 8. Then you're going to draw 2 cards off the top of your deck. You're going to choose one of the cards to use as an in-game scoring condition. So each of the 6 rounds, you're going to have 6, by the end of the game, 6 different scoring conditions that are unique for you. And then the other card that you don't choose, you place down, and there's just a couple of resources on the bottom of that one, and you will gather those resources on top of the resources that everybody else got. So it's a little asymmetrical from round to round. 90% of your resources are going to be the same, but then you got a few that you're going to choose on your own that allow you to kind of branch off in these different directions. But it's really is, again, by the time you get to the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds, everybody's doing something completely different. Everybody is getting different resources. They're spending different resources, and you're really going up on different tracks. And it's kind of one of those games. A lot of these flip and writes are that way. It's amazing what a game where you get mostly the same stuff over and over and over again, by people starting to go different branches as you start playing through the game, the way by the time you get to the end of the game, of course, everybody's sheets are completely different. Everybody's done something completely different. I may go the economic route. Somebody may go more on the wall building and the defense route. And it's really these 4 scoring tracks you have at the bottom. I forget what each of the 4 tracks are, but they come out very different, and you get different advantages. And again, depending on the scoring conditions that you choose, that's another really unique part of the game, is that you may choose 6 different ones than I do, and so we're both trying to push different tracks to do different things. It really is it's unique. but it is a bit of a brain burner. There's no doubt. There were points where we would sit and you do a lot of it simultaneous, which helps the speed of play because everybody gathers their resources. And then once everybody's gathered their resources, everybody's going to draw those 2 cards. You're going to take your couple of extra resources. And then it's like I was kind of leading that up. Every time everybody got their stuff, I would say, go. And everybody would kind of, okay, now. And everybody, you're kind of trusting everybody that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And nobody's, bending any rules or anything. But you're all simultaneously, you're taking stuff out of this stack of resources, you're putting stuff back, you're moving up your tracks, you're coloring in your sheet. And there were times that Michael had played it a couple of times already. There were times that he would get done and he would just kind of sit there and watch us play for, a good 4 or 5 minutes while we would finish out a turn because he maybe had a quick idea or he, used his resources either efficiently or inefficiently. He actually ended up whipping the other 2 of us in the game. So I'm going to say he did it pretty efficiently. But that is one of the drawbacks, even though a lot of it is simultaneous. There were points and actually, since I was a first-time player, I had asked Michael for some help. Dan was playing it for the first time as well, so Michael helped me early on, and then he flipped over and automatically started, hey, Dan, you could do this. And then Dan was like, nope, back off. This is my game. Don't mess with my game. So Mike kind of sat back and folded his arms and was like, all right, I'll just watch and see what you do. I get you. So I was more receptive to that help, and Dan was a little less receptive, which is fine. Dan wanted to play his game. But I could see one of the drawbacks, again, is if you get done quickly, you are going to kind of sit and watch for a few minutes while the other people finish up their turn. But overall, for the pace of play of the game, I think that would have to happen. It's advertised as a 30 to 60 minute. I would say our game probably took us a good 60, maybe even a little longer. It was a learning game again, and there's a lot going on that you're trying to wrap your head around. So Dan and I, even halfway through the game, we were still asking questions. What does this area do again? But there's going to be areas. There's so many areas you can go to that there's going to be areas of your sheets that you're almost not going to touch. And I'll tell you, even though Michael had played it 3 or 4 times, I think, there was one of the areas, the Coliseum area of the board. He said, I don't even fully understand the way that works. He goes, I'm going to give you my impression of how I think it's supposed to work. He goes, but I've never touched that, and none of the 3 of us touched it in our game. And so he was like, well, next game I play, I'm going to try to do that just to kind of see if the payoff is as good as what it it seems to be advertised as. But there's a couple of areas, and I've heard that as well from reviewers and stuff that have played this game, that the first time you play, you kind of want to get maybe 60 or 70% of the game down and 60 or 70% of those sheets, but you're probably not even going to touch 20 or 30% of the areas just because there's so many things going on, so many things that you could touch, that if you learn 60 or 70% of it on your first play, you're doing pretty good. So, but it was
with it all being simultaneous, is there no player interaction?
There is very, very little. The only thing that they had, and without getting into, again, I could explain the game for an hour. One of the mechanics of it is that that card that you use, that you chose your resources,
right?
There is a little Tetris shape on that card, and there's one of the little areas on the board that if you activate that area, you get to draw a Tetris shape, and you cover up some resources, and whatever resources you cover up with the shape are what you get. To activate that part, I think it was you had to pay. It was one of the black meeples. It was, I forget what they represented. I think it might have been a fighter, but you normally would cash that into the bank and to the resource pile if you wanted to activate the shape on your card. But if you don't want to activate, if that one doesn't help you as much, you can activate the same shape on one of the person to the left or right of you. But to do that, you basically give them a resource. So the player interaction is you actually might have to boost them, give them something, give them that it's actually that worker. Instead of putting it in the resource pile, you put it on their card to show that that card has been used, and nobody else can then after that use that card that round for that shape. But then when you do that, they get to take that off of their card and use it during that round. So
almost like resources carry over from round to round.
They do not. You wipe resources at the end of the round, and so you want to try to most efficiently use up all your resources. And that was one thing. I don't think I ever had any resources that I didn't use. Michael mentioned, even though he kicked our tail, he had a couple of rounds, he said, which was unusual for him, that he had to throw away several resources. So even though he was doing something right, he still was kind of wasting some resources at some points. But
it seems like it could cause some problems. I mean, if it's supposed to be simultaneous, but you want to do something that's going to be giving them a resource, and you slow play it to where it's at a point where they can't use it anymore.
Right.
that can make
Not
it
so
drag.
simultaneous.
We did that a little bit. I know Michael at one point, he was just sitting over there he had one of the little turquoise workers just sitting there, and he kind of had his arms folded, and me and Dan looked at him, and I was like, oh, you're all done, right? And he's like, well, I think I'm done. He goes, unless one of you gives me something. If one of you gives me something, that may trigger 4 more things that I can do. So he was just kind of sitting over there waiting to see if we were going to give him a resource so that he could then start his game again and start playing. And that happens in this game. There was a point where I was down. I had one resource, and I couldn't figure out where to put it. I'm looking all over these things. Then, again, being a first-time player, Michael was like, well, you could use that guy to go over there and do a thing, and then that's going to actually give you that. And when you do that, that's going to trigger that. And then I found I played another 5 minutes after I thought I was
somebody
done.
else's board.
Yeah, well, no, actually, it was my own board. It was mine. But he just saw something because there's so much to look at. He was like, there was a spot where you could actually, it might have been 2 guys, but you can trade in 2 meeples of any color to then take 1 meeple of any color. So he's like, oh, well, don't forget about that spot on the board where you can do that.
He was playing your board, showing you how much better.
He was just sitting over there, not doing anything because he was done with his turn. And so I was like, Michael, I don't know where I could use this guy or these 2 guys. And then he was like, well, don't forget, you can do that to do that. And he goes, and if you do that and you put it over there, that's going to give you a brick. And then you can use the brick on the wall, which then gives you another worker. And then you can do that and go build your market. And then you can use the market to cash that in. And so, again, I literally was playing another 5 minutes after I thought I was done, just because he keyed me off on something I could do that set off this chain of events. So
how fast does the game get into giving you combo-tastic feels?
Almost immediately. Right off the bat, almost everything you do gives you something. There are some just plain white spaces that you fill in areas, but I mean, like on the I call them the markets. Actually, only one of them is the market, but the building area where you're building on your right sheet, where it was our right sheet. I don't know if it matters how you lay it out, but anyway, the very first space on I think every one of the tracks gives you another worker of a different color, and so immediately you're using this worker. It allows you to shade this in, and then in that area. There's all these different areas, but let's just say the blue one at the top is is your merchants, and then as you build your merchants, it opens up markets. If you have just the level 1 merchants, so when you color in that first square, then it triggers your level 1 market. So now I can use the level 1 market. I can only use that once, but then once I get to my level 3 merchants over there, then it opens my second level of my market, and that allows me to cash in things to do different things. So yeah, that comboing happens pretty quick. Again, it's much more on turn 6 than it is on turn 1.
But it's not like some games where you feel like Wingspan, for example.
Yeah.
You take that first action and it does nothing. Right, like you get that one thing. It isn't until you're deeper into the rounds that you start to feel the combos kicking in.
Yeah, the combos
At
really.
At the same time, you feel like you've earned it. I mean, I feel like that would maybe cheapen the experience a little bit if it ramps up a little bit too quickly. But I guess there's 2 sides to every coin.
Yeah, it doesn't. Again, on those buildings that you're building on the right, the first square on every one gives you something, but I think then on all of them, the second one was always a white square. So the second time you do it, you're getting nothing for it. And then I'm just looking here on the sheet. It looks like the third and the fourth one would always give you something. Then the 5th one doesn't. So yeah, it ramps up a bit, but unless you go in hard on one of them. And one of the objectives that I chose was to max out tracks on that building area. And so, I went heavy into trying to max out as many of those tracks as I could. I think Dan didn't have that card and didn't play that card, so he wasn't focusing on that as much. He was using the ones that he needed to trigger things. I was just trying to color in as many squares over there as I could.
And this is where you talked about the differentiating paths, which I find a lot of flip and fills, especially Rob and I, who I guess we've known each other so long. I feel like we tend to be the exact same plays through the majority of a flip and fill game.
Yeah.
But you talked about the differentiating paths. Is it because Dan didn't have access to that objective?
Or if he did, actually, you're all going to have the same, it's 6 rounds, and you all have the same 12 cards. So they're all identical, but they're going to come up in different order because you shuffle the 12 cards into a random, and then you draw 2 at a time. And again, each time you choose one of them as your objective, and then one for your resources.
Are you each choosing this from the same 2?
No. So yeah, you each shuffle your decks independently. So
that's what really drives that differentiating paths.
Right.
Is because he may not see that objective for filling in the markets, the tracks like you did until later in the game.
Possibly, or he may have that resource.
I was trying to figure out what splits you guys off so fast.
Yeah, one of the resources he needed maybe was on that card, so he chose to use that for the resource instead of the in-game scoring, and so that helps, or that makes that decision for you as well. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's a good game. I'm looking forward to running you through it. I think think I know it well enough now to teach it. So again, it'll be a 30, 45 minute teach. But yeah,
there you go, Mitchell. It's another flip and fill roll and write.
Yeah, if you want a heavy one that plays like a board game, I mean, this is the
Did
deep
you guys
end.
plan this out? Did you somehow know I was going to say I didn't like roll and writes and then just talk only about them?
This one's on the deep end. So like, and if you want a heavier experience, this one, as far as a roll and write goes, this one will rival some board games. So.
Well, let's talk about rivaling board games, right? I'm going to stay in that ancient feel.
Okay, there you go.
I'm sticking in that ancient feel, but I'm going to one up you on the weight here, right? Because you're talking Hadrian's Wall at what?
3.14.
3.14. I'm talking about Imperium Classics by Osprey Games at a 3.42, baby.
All right, that's a big jump.
It's getting deep.
Yeah.
So I got to play solo because just like Hadrian's Wall, it's got a very high weight to it. And this is a deck builder by Osprey Games, designed by Nigel Buckle and David Turksky. And the art is done by Mihailo Dimitrievski.
Good luck.
A lot of consonants in there. It's very hard for me. But the reason I bring up all those names, and this is the reason why Hadrian's Wall is still sitting there, Robert, untouched, out of shrink, looked at it, put it back.
Oh, yeah?
I had a desire to really figure out Imperium because David Tursky is a designer of Anachrony.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Mihailo did the art for Architects of the West Kingdom, Paladins, Raiders, right? Osprey, the publishers of games that I played for years, like Bolt Action, right? Miniature War Game. They published those books. I've purchased history books from them because they were originally a book publisher, right? So they're the wargaming group where us old wargamers can go buy art books about how each different cohort or unit in a Roman army was dressed. They talk about colors and weapons and right. So these are history book writers, right? But now they're publishing games like Undaunted Normandy, Undaunted Africa, The King is Dead, Lost Expeditions. You remember that one? Sure, that was a fun one. Wildlands, Frostgrave, right? And Stargrave. These are other miniatures games. So this is a company that I know well. All of those things combined made me say, I'm going to figure out how to play this.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I leave Hadrian's Wall on the wall, Imperium came to the table.
All right.
And I'm still not sure if I'm playing it right.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, for certain, I am playing it wrong, but it is worth the effort here. Really? So in Imperium Classic, you're playing a very heavy deck builder. This is not Dominion, right? This is a heavy deck builder. It's a civilization game. Each box, there's Imperium Classics and Imperium Legends. I have both. Each box comes with 8 civilizations. Imperium Legends are more like the fantasy type civilizations. You're going to have Utopians in there or Arthurians, right? Like King Arthur type stuff. But in the classics, you're going to have your classical type Macedonians, Romans, your Persians, right? Your actual civilizations. And all what you're trying to do is get your civilization from its barbarian state to its empire state through ascension. You're going to send them into that new state. So you're going to go from the barbarian state where you're doing things that more barbarian type actions like conquering lands or defeating, others. These are the type of cards that you would play to get different resources. Once you hit ascension and you flip to the empire state, you're doing more things like developing your culture, inventing, right? Building culture. Those are the cards that you're playing to get the points. The way it's done on the board is you've got your state, it's a card, so barbarian or empire. You start on the barbarian side, which means you can only play cards that have barbarian symbols on them. Anything with an empire symbol on them, you can't play them yet. You haven't developed enough. After you play all your cards from your hand, so just like any other deck builder, you're going to get 5 cards in your hand, and you're going to play them, but you have 3 action tokens that you get each round. So you can only take 3 actions. So out of those 5 cards, you got to figure out which 3 am I going to play, right? For the most part, which 3 of the 5 cards am I going to play? And then you're going to take those actions playing those cards. You're going to discard down if you choose to, and then draw back up. Whenever you empty your deck, your deck and your discard is full, you empty your deck, you can't draw anymore. At that point, you have the opportunity to take a nation card from the nation deck. There's about 6 or so nation cards there, depending on the number of players. Once you get through all your nation cards, so each time you've cycled through your deck, like about 6 times, you then hit Ascension. When you hit Ascension is when you get to do the empire type actions, where you're doing the more cultural type things, developing your nation. You don't do that attacking stuff anymore because you're too good for that, right? Once you complete the nation side and you empty out the deck, you go into scoring and end the game. However, there's this thing where these revolt cards, whenever you take certain cards into your deck, when you draw them in your hand, you acquire them, you may also be taking a revolt card. If ever the revolt deck is empty, the game immediately ends, and the player with the least revolt cards in their deck, hand, or discards combined is going to be the winner of the game. So there's like a balance there. I want to take these cool cards like religion, right? I want to take that religion card, but it comes with a revolt, right? So, okay, now I got to take actions. It's almost like a fear card in Arnak, or it's a bad card, like a curse card in Dominion, right? You have to take actions to then get rid of these cards. So there's a lot of push and pull here, a lot of levers up and down on what to play, what order to play them in. You're going to develop your nation, because every time you cycle through your deck and you grab another nation card, you get the opportunity to spend resources like material or population or even progress tokens. You can spend those to develop. And when you take a development card, you put that into your discard pile, and now that gives you even better options to do more cool stuff as a nation. And there is player interaction in the sense that you're pulling from the same supply decks, right? But the supply deck isn't like normal. Normally you have a bunch of supply decks that are just kind of spread out. In this one, it's got these 3 different decks for civilized cards, uncivilized cards, and region cards. But then you got this main deck was a combination of those 3 plus these banner cards, which give you just awesome benefits on top of that. So you're kind of fighting for those. You're placing I played it wrong.
Oh, yeah?
I'll just say that. I played it wrong.
Right. Yeah.
I really like this revolt mechanic you're talking about. So I'm going to assume if you're drawing a card that makes you get a revolt card, it's going to be a more powerful card, right? Kind of like
it's a type, right? So whenever you take a civilized or uncivilized card, you're going to take a revolt card with it.
Right. But what I'm saying is if it's a card, oh, okay, I understand now. So does it make sense strategically, if I'm understanding this correctly? Like, let's say you're not going to win. You know, you're not going to win based on points or whatever. And you know that someone else has a lot of revolt cards, you can just drive that mechanic and end the game and win with the least.
Yeah, because you have knowledge of your deck, and you have knowledge of the main revolt deck to see how many are left. And if you feel you've got less, and you feel you can pull those last few out of the revolt that trigger the end of the game, and you win, right? Based on what you've seen them cycle. So it kind of gives you 2 different ways to win. I think the key parts of this game is the fact that there's 16 different civilizations that all play completely differently. So you're not just playing your game anymore, right? You're also having to understand what their game is, right? So if I know that Robert's playing the Romans, he gets points for taking regions, right? So when I go to acquire cards to my deck, do I want to take the card that really benefits me, or am I going to try to prevent Robert from getting easy access to the cards that give him the most benefits? So I might go pull all the region cards out and prevent him from being able to do what he does best, which is conquer. That's what the Romans want to do.
So is that asymmetry what contributes to the weight being so high, or is it heavy without that?
I would think so, yeah.
It's definitely the asymmetry that makes it heavy, but I think the heaviest part of the game is because Osprey being historical in nature, they want each civilization to do what that civilization did best, right? So with the Greeks, they're creating culture, they're doing math, right? They're doing all the things that the Greeks did, which is completely different than the Romans did. So they had to create these different piles. Right? So the nation cards are different for each nation. You have a development deck. You have your ascension cards that's different. You have your power for each faction. There's so many differences in each of these factions that it has to spread it out. Your brain kind of melts it a little bit.
Yeah, that concerns me a little bit. I mean, obviously it's going to have a lot of replayability, right?
Yeah.
But it makes me think, I mean, a completely different game, but like Root. In my opinion, Root is not that heavy. But each faction is completely different, completely different goals and things like that. And it's got a pretty high rating weight. I think it's 3 point something. And it's only because there are so many factions out there. So to me, it doesn't seem like it's as accessible as it could be if they just stuck with the cutesy little animals, something light. So, but I guess that's what you're saying. It's supposed to be a heavy game, so I guess it makes sense a little bit more with that one.
Right, and probably the heaviest deck builder out there. But
It definitely sounds like it.
your parallel is correct. The idea behind it is, I'm not going to win just because I know how to play the Romans. I have to know how to play against the Persians with my Romans, right? So really, for folks that get into this, it's going to be like a Twilight Struggle level game, top of the boards. You're going to see this one around a lot more. More folks are going to be talking about this one because there's a lot of goody in this game. But then you're going to see the dichotomy. I think this is going to be a love or hate game.
I just checked. Root's a 3.69 on the complexity on BGG, and this is a 3.7. So they're almost identical in weight. So interesting. And I was also checking while you were talking, Carlos. Man vs. Meeple actually just did a live play. It took about an hour and 45 minutes last week, and I caught the last about 15 minutes of it. So I watched the very end of them doing the live play, and yeah, it looked like a lot of fun. They were playing the Greeks versus the Romans on there. So I
think you're going to find that a lot of solo gamers are going to love this game because it has a solo system that is amazing. So I talked about each empire being, each civilization being in either a barbarian state or an empire state. Whenever you play against a solo bot, they're going to pull a card right from its hand. It's a virtual hand. Or you're going to roll a die. It'll tell you which card of that virtual hand to flip, and you're going to resolve that card based on a table for that civilization, which is based on whether it's in barbaric state or empire state. And it'll do a different thing, right? So you might flip a card, and that card says on the table, you're going to put that card in its history, and you're going to gain a region from the supply, right? And maybe that's what the Romans are doing, is they're getting more regions each round, right? So every card that you flip, and you could flip between 3 and 5 cards for that AI faction each round, depending on what you roll, right? You're going to flip a number of cards. It's going to do a different thing with each and every card. It feels like you're playing an actual person, not a bot, right? Not a system. So the solo system in this is, I think, second to none. I'm looking forward to continuing the solo gaming because I really want to grok this, understand it before I even try to teach it, because I probably sounded like a fool trying to explain it here. But I'm going to play it again. Probably more than I'll play Hadrian's Wall, because the art is gorgeous. The history is there. Each civilization, the way they play is so different. And I love deck building. Deck building is a mechanism that I really, really enjoy. This is like taking deck building to the nth degree. Wow. I want to see if I can handle it.
Okay.
Is my challenge.
Yeah, we'll have to try it sometime.
That's Imperium, both Classics and Legends, published by Osprey Games. So that's the last game I wanted to highlight that I played this last week. Anybody else got any other games they wanted to highlight?
Mitchell, anything else?
Played a ton of games, but we'd be here all night if I highlighted all of them.
You see what I'm saying? Like, we can do this all night.
Yeah. Only one I wanted to touch real quick on was just a quick update on Arkham Horror, the card game that I've been playing with Dan. So with this, we got our third session in. We've been playing Monday nights, and so far we're 3 for 3. We've had all 3 Mondays. We haven't had to skip one yet, but we played. We finished the base game, so we played the third and final scenario in the base set, and we didn't do great. We did all right. So, but we finished that up on Monday night, and then we played. Dan brought over the first, brought over the Dunwich Legacy, which is the first one they published after that. We're going to try to play them in the order that they came out, and we got in the first of 8 scenarios in the Dunwich Legacy series, and we actually did pretty well on that one, I think. So we got completed our objective. We got out. I'm not going to give any spoilers here, but seemed like we didn't take. I took quite a bit of damage. I almost died, but as long as you don't die, you start the next one complete clean slate. You wipe it and you start fresh on the next one. So we did well in the first one, got that one beat, and so I'm looking forward to. They did a little something different with the deck, and I've said over and over that I've heard from people who have played through this series and played through the I think it's 8 different stories they have now. For the main stories, they have tons of little side ones that you can buy, but people have said that as they play through this card game, it's just incredible the different ways they find to use just a deck of cards to work in different mechanics and different stories and things. And they did a little twist on this very first one that seems kind of interesting, and I'm very curious about where this is going to go. So looking forward to that. And so, hopefully we'll get in next Monday and get the next one and I'll keep giving updates without any spoilers, just on how it's going. But really enjoying it so far. Yeah.
I enjoy Arkham Horror. I enjoyed our plays of it. I just don't know if I could commit like you tried to do to play all of them.
I love Legacy. I love playing continuing stories. So yeah, that's my thing.
Well, that'll wrap up our games played for this last week or so. Stick around as we finish up with some gaming adjacent topics, other geeky goodness.
Hey, this is Jamie Stegmeyer from Stonemeyer Games, and you are watching the Beans and Dice podcast.
All right, folks, we're back. We're going to talk a little bit about our acquisitions and other gaming topics, gaming adjacent things. I'll kick us off. I showed it in the call-in show. We started unboxing it. My Unmatched Deadpool came in, so I had pre-ordered 2 of them. And I got to say, I'm pleasantly surprised, but a little disappointed.
Yeah.
I was really hoping for a competitive player, like a competitive piece to play. I'm surprised as to how deep they went into like the Deadpool, fourth wall craziness.
Yeah.
But I think that pretty much makes it like
almost broke.
Right. Well, not broke like in a good way.
Yeah.
Like unplayable.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I'm going to win any tournaments with this.
Yeah, they went a little heavy with it.
So it's pretty deep. It's Restoration Games and Mondo. The Unmatched is a kind of a tactical 2-player head-to-head miniatures game on a board for board gamers, and they just came out with Deadpool. He's crazy. He does stuff like, if there's food on the table, this card is worth 5 more points. What's on? No pants.
Yeah, if you have no pants at the end of the game, well, it says if you have no pants at the end of the round, go put on pants. But then, you
if
get
this
some
card
crazy
is
power.
not sleeved, you add 4 power to it because it has no pants.
Yeah.
So
It seems like a game like if you know what the cards are, you can really manipulate what's happening. If nobody else knows what's going on, you make sure you have some chimichangas. You make sure,
And I think that's the name of the card, chimichangas.
It's a chimichanga
if
card
there's
in
food
there,
on the
yeah.
table.
I mean, the artwork in it is incredible, and the way they did it. I mean, every card in Unmatched, usually your cards have a certain art style, and they all look the same. I guess this one has an art style, but every card. I mean, one of the cards looks like it's a credit card that he stole from
Xavier.
Xavier, and then so I mean, they're so wildly, drastically different, and some of them play pretty straight. I was reading through about 2/3 of the cards play fairly straight, but then there's about 1/3 of the cards that are just kind of crazy bonkers.
Yeah, like cards like where at the end of the game, if you won, the other player has to buy you a drink.
Yeah, so it's just kind of some weird, fun stuff they threw in there. So again, I think Restoration announced when they did it, they kind of said that this is going to be kind of just a fun promotional one that may not be as playable. So
that's what makes me sad. I was really hoping for someone to go against Bruce Lee because Bruce Lee is so overpowered.
Oh, yeah.
I was hoping to see how Deadpool compared. We shall see.
Probably not going to be Deadpool, but
that was my acquisition.
Yeah, it's fun though. It looks really cool, and it'll be a nice little conversation piece. Yeah.
Yeah, I got one in shrink if anybody wants. No,
You want to buy one?
I don't think I'll need both.
Got one for sale.
All right, Mitchell, what you got?
The only acquisition I've physically gotten in this week was Reef, which I've talked about a little bit before. I had some others that were supposed to come in and got delayed, but I just wanted to mention a friend of mine backed Ares Expedition on Kickstarter, and she got it today. So I don't know, it's been a month or 2 since Target has it, and now she's getting it. She wasn't miffed about it. She, she's a big Terraforming Mars fan, so she was happy to have the upgraded components, all like 2 of them.
I was to say they came with the snazzy bins, the storage bins. Yeah.
Did she have upgraded pieces or the extras, like the mats or anything? Because I hear that really did delay the delivery. Is anyone that purchased those extras?
She just sent me a picture of the box itself, so I'm not sure. It was just a quick text to let me know she got it. I don't think she's even played it yet.
Our buddy came over last week with his mats, so he got the neoprene mats. That delayed his shipment from arriving. But then I got kind of a little sad because those mats were beautiful.
And they were nice, yeah.
Those player mats are beautiful. Rob, any acquisitions for you?
No, I haven't picked up anything. So my last one was Micro Macro, which I'm looking forward to. I mentioned on the live call-in show that I just today learned that those game sessions of that are, they said about 10 to 15 minutes, which is good. I was kind of a happy surprise. So I'm really looking forward to playing that one. So hopefully this week I'll get a game or 2 of it in, and then I can report back on how it went. But
It's gaming adjacents or other things that are in the gaming type world. Right, so I just watched the movie Explorers, introduced it to my kids. It's a 1985 movie,
Okay.
if I remember correctly, and it's got like River Phoenix and hang on, it's
I'm
there.
looking up here on the IMDb.
It's Ethan Hawke. That's who it was. River Phoenix and Ethan Hawke, and they build a spaceship together, and they get to go explore the universe, and they meet other aliens. I think the biggest surprise for me as a grown-up now is that Robert Picardo played multiple roles in this show. So if you're a Star Trek fan like me in Voyager, he played the Doctor, the hologram Doctor in Voyager. So watching him play these silly alien roles in there, it really it was so 80s. This movie was so feel-good 80s movie. My 10-year-old loved it. So now I'm like, okay, now I got to introduce him to Goonies. I got to take him through all my 80s fun movies, which, it's probably pre-Mitchell movies. I don't even think Mitchell was alive when
I was
these
born in
movies came out.
1990.
Yep. So my 80s movies are all pre-Mitchells. So
That's funny.
any gaming adjacent for you, Mitchell?
I don't have anything gaming adjacent. I have something directly related to gaming that I wanted to talk about. Stegmaier just announced today a new-ish game, the pre-order coming up for Rolling Realms. So for those of you listening, if you don't know, during COVID, Stonemaier Games released a print-and-play game that's based on the worlds of all of its games. Initially, it was called Nine Worlds. Then Jamie found out there's actually a game called that, so they changed it to Rolling Realms. And so it's got a little bit of mechanic and theme from all those great Stonemaier games, Scythe, Tapestry, Viticulture, Wingspan. And so it was print and play, but they are publishing a hard copy. Just like other roll and writes you guys mentioned, it's infinitely scalable, but it comes with 6-player boards with dry erase markers, but you could have multiple copies and play as much as you want. They're waiting on the shipments, and then they're about to start pre-orders. One unique thing that they're doing that I think is kind of cool is it's not if you pre-order, but if you request a pre-order form for each person that does that, they're donating losing my speech. They're donating $1 to a nonprofit that works on, protecting the environment and things like that. I thought that was pretty cool. So even if you don't plan on getting it, might be worth it just to request one of those forms so they can do a little bit of good with those donations.
I've seen some of the artwork that's been released, and it's so cool because you see on the Rolling Realms art, it has like little mechs from Scythe, and it's got like the viticulture pieces in there. So you kind of see a lot of the different worlds that Jamie's company has created, right? Yeah. All in this one little game. And I like they have Easter eggs in their games. So like in Red Rising, one of the cards has a coin from Scythe on it. In Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, before Red Rising was even announced, in the game room, there's a copy of Red Rising on the shelf. Cool. I gotta take a look for that.
Yeah, so they do a lot of that cross-referencing thing. This isn't one I think I'm going to pick up. I'm a big Stonemaier fanboy. I have most of their content, but this whole borrowing from each game just doesn't do it for me.
No? Okay. Or is it the fact that it's a roll and write? Like, I wouldn't have anticipated you bringing up a roll and write topic.
Yeah.
Maybe that. No, it just, like, there's Scythe and there's My Little Scythe. Give me the full version of Scythe, and I know it's for a purpose, but I want the full experience. I don't want little pieces of different games.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I fall for that trap. It's the nostalgia or the feelings that you get from all those different other games, where you can kind of feel the goodness that you remember, the fondness for those different worlds all in one game. Makes me say this will be a roll and write that I'd look at. And the dice look great too. The dice are beautiful.
Oh yeah.
They got little hexes as pips.
I haven't seen it yet. I'll have to look it up and check it out.
Rolling Realms, Stonemaier Games. That's a great news bit.
Rolling Realms. Okay, cool.
Any gaming or adjacent or news?
Just a couple quick things I wanted to touch on. Couple movie type related things. The new Dune trailer came out, and I'm pretty impressed. I kind of went on this. Doom Imperium quickly moved up my list of favorite games.
Him too.
Yeah, he's liking it too. Huh?
He played it twice this week. Did you hear him when he said it? Dune,
I missed that.
Twice.
Yeah, Dune twice.
I was going to bring it up.
No, that was Arnak.
Arnak twice.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
good. Hey, welcome to the club.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, Dune Imperium, and the new trailer came out, and the more I'm seeing of this movie, the more I'm starting to dig it, this world. I saw the old 1984, 85 Dune, and
Pre-Mitchell.
Yeah, Pre-Mitchell. Yeah, again, Pre-Mitchell. So I heard somebody explain, I think actually we were talking about it maybe on the Dice Tower or something, they were saying, and I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but they were saying if you didn't read the books and you didn't know the world, coming into that 1980s movie, it didn't explain enough of what was going on, and you could be lost for most of the movie. And but I think this new one seems to hopefully fix that. From what I'm seeing in the trailers, there seems to be a lot of explaining the back history of stuff that's going on, and Arrakis and the different houses and Fremen and the Bene Gesserits and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really getting psyched about this one. I can't wait for that to come out. So,
well, in my opinion, the book doesn't do a great job of doing that either. I'm a big reader. I've never read Dune. After playing the game, I read the first couple chapters, and
I couldn't.
Kind of lost.
I tried to read it twice, but when I was just in high school, I had a friend who was a big reader, and he was like, he introduced me to reading. Really, he got me to read the Lord of the Rings, and the Hobbit, and a bunch of other things.
In high school, you learn about reading.
Yeah, you learn to read. Yeah. And so, no, I never.
Your parents were so
I stayed
proud.
away from books completely before that. I never had read anything that I didn't have to read for school. And so he got me to read, like I said, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit series. And then he handed me Dune, and he's like, "This one's a step up," but he goes, "Give this one a shot." And I tried to read it 2 different times. I tried to get into it. I couldn't get maybe past 2 chapters, and then there was just so much going on. It was so hard to keep track of, and if I can't wrap my mind around what I'm reading and get the backstory on it, I have a hard time with it and struggle, and I definitely struggled with the books. And so
it's going to be blasphemy what I'm about to say as a reader. The book is always better, but I think with this one I'm going to watch the movie so I understand the basics.
Might help
and
you
then try
get into the book. The
movie, I mean, it's got some big names attached to it. Jason Momoa and Dave Bautista. So I think it's going to be good. I don't think they would sign on to something
I was stunned watching that trailer, seeing all those
As the different
stars.
faces popped up, I was like, oh, he's in that. Oh, they're in that.
This is going to be good. We're excited about this. Part of it is it releases on or around my birthday.
Your birthday,
Muhammad's birthday.
Right.
Chris's birthday. There's quite a few people with that October 20-ish birthday time frame.
Let's get a group together. Yeah.
And my thought is, hey, we do a week of playing Dune board games, and then we all go as a group together to go watch the movie.
Yep, and they've announced.
I'll fly in from Louisiana, maybe. No.
For the party.
They just announced another game today. I can't remember. Actually, it was, I think, announced yesterday. Another Dune universe
7
game.
or 8 different Dune
we're at
games.
least 5 or 6 at least for now. So
Portal Games is doing a detective version of it. There'll be plenty of Dune games.
The one they announced today is Social Deduction, based. It was kind of off the Resistance, from what I understand. So that'll be interesting to see. So,
once we get everybody purchasing a few, we'll play all of them that week, and then we'll go watch the movie.
I'm all in.
That's Dune.
And then the other one, real quick, just a Black Widow. I actually went and saw with the family Tuesday night, so just the night before last, and it was good. I know, Mitchell, we were talking a little bit before the show, and you've seen it, so you can chime in on this, certainly. I would say it was one of the lesser Marvel movies for me. It was good, but I don't know, it was missing something. I heard somebody before I saw it say that unfortunately, the Black Widow character, Scarlett Johansson's character, kind of took a back seat, and she was one of the less interesting characters in the movie, and I think I would have to agree.
In her own movie?
Yeah, they introduced her sister in this. Her sister has a lot more personality than she does, is a bigger role. The bad guys in this one, the ones that are made out to be her family, I don't want to spoil too much, are more interesting characters. Yeah, I think, it really was tough to watch it and know that it was her movie, but it really wasn't her movie. So
for me, it kind of fell flat because, the MCU has such big stakes. The last major movie, you had a dude that killed literally half of everything. And now it's like, oh, let's go around on this little adventure, and she can deal with it by herself. She doesn't need all of her friends. Why are her friends not helping her? So the stakes weren't as high, and that's the bad thing about having such good movies. And it's like, whenever you're up here, even this movie would probably be a good movie if we weren't expecting it to be a Marvel movie. It's just the expectations are high. And then I feel like it cheapened her death a lot. I don't think that's a spoiler. Endgame was like years ago. Saying
statutes of limitations have expired.
Let's do a prequel, and it's like, well, we said goodbye to her already. You know how like Loki dies all the time, and like you don't care anymore because he died all the time. That's what it feels like. And so I know part of that probably came because it got delayed because of COVID. like the movie's been done for like over a year or maybe 2 years or something, and it had to get delayed. But I completely agree with what you're talking about, Rob, that those other characters that we're going to see more of now.
Yeah.
Her sister and Red Guardian, which is the communist Soviet Union version of Captain America. I know we're going to see more of them, and I'm excited for that. But yeah, it kind of fell flat for me. I know another big thing in the news right now is the lawsuit Scarlett Johansson suing because she's not getting a percentage of the royalties from the cinematic release, but supposedly she agreed to like a flat payment that some people are saying may have been more than what she would have gotten because it's not doing as well as they hoped. So
how did y'all see it? Did y'all do cinematic
I went
or
to the
at
theater
home?
and saw it.
Disney Plus for me.
Disney Plus for you. We did the opposites. Yeah.
So even, I mean, very similar. It sounds like very similar responses from both of you, even because sometimes not seeing it in theaters, you lose something.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this one isn't it. Like Disney Plus might be okay for this.
It was a good action flick. There was a lot of action. There's a lot of fight scenes.
That's what I love about
like
Black Widow is her fight style, her shoot style is very, I don't know, Keanu Reeves, John Wick-ish.
Yeah, but even in the first one, again, the overshadowing of her character, her sister, the first big action scene that I can remember, her sister's with her, and her sister...
If you don't like spoilers, at this point, fast forward for like 2 minutes.
It's not a spoiler.
I don't think it's a spoiler to say that her sister's there, but her sister kind of really steals the opening fight scene, and then the first big scene against the bad guy, the bad person in this one, her sister really steals that one. Actually, her sister kind of calls her out and calls her kind of a wuss in it. She's like, "Oh, you're taking the easy road. Let's get dirty in this." So
yeah, I like how the sister's constantly saying like, "Why do you keep doing those poses? Like, why whenever you fall?"
There was definitely some humor in there. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm gonna have to Disney Plus it at least for that kind of humor.
Yeah, and I'll say my 17-year-old and my 15-year-old really wanted to see it. So, and I think that's why we ended up probably seeing it at the theater.
He's a 17-year-old boy, I can imagine.
Yeah, a little bit, but we waited till it was the $5 movie night at the the theater here before we went and saw it. I don't know if we would have gone and paid full price for it. So, but yeah, it was. This
is good. This is good for the folks at home to understand. Yeah. Kind of give them what to expect.
It was worth seeing, but yeah, there's no doubt it's a letdown from all the big. But
this is good because when I go watch it, I'm not going to go in with the high expectations. So it might exceed my expectations and be actually worth it. So this is a great conversation.
One thing I will say, and I'm not going to say spoilers or anything, but I'll just say that there was a character introduced in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a very minor character that was also in Black Widow. And supposedly, whenever Black Widow was supposed to be like 2 years ago, this was supposed to be her introduction. So thinking about it that way, kind of the how that changes the dynamics is interesting to think about. Just a side note.
Okay.
Yeah, that you're right. That releasing it so late kind of messes up the
order of things,
the canon or the storyline.
Yeah.
All right, Mitchell, I'll let you end it off. And any other final topics on gaming adjacent or news or otherwise?
You guys need to watch Loki. I'll just say that. It's
we got to catch up on that.
If you're gonna watch any Marvel Cinematic Universe content in the future, you have to watch Loki.
All right, I'll commit to getting started on it. I'll get started on it.
And let me just say,
it's only 6 episodes.
Tom Vassell did Tom Vassell did a review of that not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, I think. He did just the Tom Talks or whatever he does on Board Game Breakfast, and he said that he thought Loki was the worst of between the Winter Soldier and then the WandaVision. But he said, I guess he said that those were self-contained stories. They were one series and it was done. He said that Loki definitely feels like, of course, they're setting it up for future stuff. And it was only 6 and it's really open-ended at the end. And, he's hoping that it'll ramp up and that they're building a story that they're going to do over a course of many seasons. But did you feel that? He said that he felt it really wasn't as exciting as the other two or as interesting as the other two. It seems like maybe you disagree with that, or
I liked it better than the other two for
did
sure.
You really?
Now,
okay.
I liked Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I like this better. It's definitely more, I guess, thinky. There's action, but it's more like the consequences of the decisions made. Yeah, that's a good word for it. Cerebral. Yeah, and for me, it's just like the foresight that the MCU or I guess Disney has. Like if they were planning on using Disney Plus to launch basically the entire next phase, I feel like some of the things that they've been hinting at happening in the films have happened before Disney Plus was even a thing. Like that's how far in the future they're thinking, and it just amazes me. I don't want to say too much, but yeah.
I'm hoping they can get it together for Star Wars and give us that kind of depth of arc
That ship has sailed. They've already
and hit the iceberg dead ahead.
Well, we'll see. They're going to reboot it.
I liked
here,
Rogue One and I liked Solo, but
Yes.
7, 8, and 9 not my thing. And Mandalorian's awesome.
Well, now that what's his name is taking it back over, y'all heard that he bought back the series. So he said
Lucas?
Yeah. They said he's
Wow.
he's not happy with what they did in 7, 8, and 9, and he's doing another 3 movie. They've announced he's going to do another 3 movie trilogy, and he's going to take it back. He says he's taking it back to his original vision. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
It's just with 7, 8, and 9, it's like first they're too much like the other ones. Okay, it's
That's
not a
my
Death
problem.
Star, but a Star Killer base, and then
Yeah.
people complain, so then they just do weird stuff like make
Ice crystal
a
dogs.
horrible person, weird stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we'll see what he does with it. So that'll be interesting. I'm sure that's far in the future because that's fairly new news that he's kind of bought back those rights. So we'll see. Yeah.
God, we can do this all night. Did you see that Disney announced the rates for the hotel, the Star Wars hotel?
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
It's
a required
2 people.
It's 2-night stay.
2-night stay for 2 people.
Starts at like
$5,000.
Oh, so I thought it started like at 3,800 or something, but yeah.
$5,000 includes all your drinks and food,
Yeah.
but no alcohol.
There's like 3 levels you can go, but yeah, depending on the room and stuff. But,
Yeah, I'm not going. My kids always tell me, "Oh, I can't wait for it to be built." I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to disappoint them now. Poppy's never doing that."
Oh no, that's never happened in my lifetime. So yeah.
One more. Have you guys seen the new upcoming animated Marvel series, What If?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's basically alternate universes. Like the first episode, I think they said was going to be is if Peggy were Captain America.
Oh.
So that ties.
Is that the one with
directly
the
into Loki.
where she's got the British shield?
Yes.
And it's kind of torn, like a piece of paper torn. I saw that image.
I haven't seen that.
It kind of juxtaposes Captain America and in his American style, but then she's there in some of the tears with the British flag on the shield instead of the Captain America.
And then the second one I think is it like Black Panther as Star-Lord? Something like it's like what if these people were taking on the guise of the other people in the MCU? And Chadwick Boseman, before he passed away, actually did the voice for Black Panther in it. So it's all the original actors, I think, except for Robert Downey. So that's kind of cool. And to understand that, you have to watch Loki.
Okay.
All right, I guess you set it up. Loki is it because I'm pulling up the What If for the 2021 season 1. And, yep, Chadwick Boseman's in there.
Oh, cool.
That's pretty cool. Great conversation. I love the ending the show with this kind of this is the geeky talk that we have,
We're all a little excited.
This is what we wanted to do for you folks at home. We wanted to give you a little taste of the kind of conversations we have when we're geeking out ourselves, and hopefully you can comment, send us an email if you're listening via podcast. Let us know that you're listening or not.
Like and subscribe.
Yep, like and subscribe. Comment on whatever system you're using. So if you're on the iTunes or the iHeartRadio, be sure to put in a rating in there. That way people see it.
Sure.
And if you're watching on the YouTubes, the video recorded version, I'll make sure you like and subscribe. But we're the Beans and Dice podcast, and what we do is we talk about how we game, and that's what we've provided for y'all.
Yep.
Again, I'm Carlos.
I'm Rob.
I'm Mitchell.
And we'll hopefully catch y'all on the next one. Join us on our live call-in show every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Call in. Tell us about what you're doing gaming. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Later. Thanks.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.